Mark here for Wisdom and Knowledge 5, and we have a great guest from the Unfiltered Rise podcast, Ex-Mormon Nurse, Heidi Luv. Heidi,
Yes.
welcome to the podcast. This will be really interesting.
This will be fun. Thank you for having
Yeah.
me. Thank you so much.
And as
And
someone,
I'm excited to be here.
oh yeah, as someone who, you're a cancer survivor. I,
Yes.
got well from Crohn's disease. I cured myself from Crohn's disease by eating healthy. We have a lot of similarities. You grew up in the Mormon church. I grew up in the Catholic church. And this is no offense to anyone who's in those organized, because we have friends in those organizations, but we get what it was about. Tell us how
we understand. We now understand indoctrination. Nothing against our fellow Christians, right?
No, not at all.
It's at the end of the day, when you get absolute power, it corrupts things. And those churches have a lot of power, both of them. Where the Catholic Church has so many members, the Mormon Church has so many dollars.
Oh, good point. I love it.
Yes, we living in Utah, you really, really are in the hub. And this is like, even though Mormonism wasn't invented here, like, despite a lot of beliefs, it was actually in New York, Ohio area where it really became a big thing. But like, here was where it stayed and settled. And so now we deal with it in everything, including politics. There's just everything. And they do what they want to do. And speaking of pharmaceuticals, they own a lot of pharmaceutical stock. And we are one of the last holdouts of states that will not legalize marijuana except for in extreme cases, and it has to be like at the pharmacy, and they made it cost a fortune. Like, it's basically unaffordable for people unless you're kind of rich to hold a card. So
wow.
And they make you renew it every 3 to 4 months. So every time you go back, you have to pay again. I don't even use marijuana. I just think it's crappy because it's a better way for a lot of people to handle their stuff, and it's more natural. Although nowadays I warn people about that too, because the way they grow it, we're not talking about old fashioned pot here. We're not talking about some swag, the hydroponic and the crossbreeding and the this and then that. And I'm sure there's something about that just hits me sideways. And I go, well, maybe that's not as natural as we might think it is,
No, not at all.
I'm sure it's better than some things out there. That's for sure. Even with all the changes. I don't know. Like I said, I can't even smoke it. It makes me psycho. So I can't do anything with it. It makes me a psycho person. Yeah. If you're a child of abuse, you do not like anything that changes your brain. You just
I know what you mean.
Can't. Yeah. I have to be 24/7 in control.
Now you were telling me that the Mormon church had a certain stance on the COVID shots, right?
Oh, they did. They actually came out to their congregation and spoke to them and encouraged not only adults, but their children to be immediately vaccinated. So that's, to me, I don't care. You want to go do it? I feel like it should be like anything. Like, you want to go do that? That's your choice. Don't talk to me about like my choice though. Like, my choice is my choice. Your choice is your choice. We could do it that way, but they didn't. They so forcefully put that on us. And then to have it come from, now, if you're a Mormon, we believe in direct revelation, whereas Catholics believe that's done. So they believe that the prophet heard from God and God told them to go get that. And so that's completely ridiculous and unfair. You can't do that. What if somebody has contraindications? What if somebody has, you don't know their life? Like, come on, it should be a personal decision that you go over with your physician and pray about and think about. Honestly, for me, it's if they told me tomorrow, you have to get that or your cancer will come back or you'll die, I'll be like, well, I'll see you later.
Same
I'm
here.
not doing it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, like, I'm not doing that because I don't trust it.
No, I don't. You said it's untested. You've raised all the concerns.
Yeah, that whole technology, like, at first when this whole thing started, I was terrified as a nurse that I knew I was going to be still called to go to work. Mental hospitals aren't shutting down. Let's be real. Like, we're open. It was busier than ever, let me tell you. And it was like, I knew I could lose my job. I almost did. I knew they came after everyone. I had to get an exemption, but luckily, this is the only time in my life it's funny. I have such severe asthma and allergies. They were like, she might die.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I might die. Don't give that to me. And so we didn't have to do that. And my kids, I took them out of school. And I mean, I'd already had an exemption for my son, pulled my daughter out completely, put her in a Montessori school. And I told my husband I would rather live in a trailer. I bought an actual like travel trailer in case they fired him and we had to like live in it because I was that serious.
Oh
So
yeah,
like,
no, I had to beat him with the long arm of the law. Luckily, I had good friends that knew the law, and where I was working at the time, I just put them in writing. They tried to enforce that stupid Biden mandate right before it was scratched, and they said they got right back to me. I said I'll only accept it in writing, and they got right back to me and said disregard it. It doesn't apply to your state.
Yeah, because we can't prove it. Yeah, and there were very few people, which is really, really sad, that actually understood that, because you're talking about certain lay people or whatever that did it against their will or lost their jobs. And I'm like, no, that's wild. I don't understand. And actually the base is really near me and I have family that works there as civilians, and they told them as civilians, you will comply, and they all had to. So I don't know. It's just not right. Anytime you see that, like, when's the last time the government came to your house and was like, oh, so do you need some insulin? Do you need help with that? Because that'll save your life. Or, oh, you have strep throat. That's contagious, super contagious. We should definitely help you pay for that. No, they don't give a crap about any of that. Yeah, they didn't supply everyone with condoms during AIDS. They didn't. What have they done ever like this? Ever? That was my first thing that I was like, beep, 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 beep. And then
great point.
the studies and the masks, I was like, the kids are touching these and going to the bathroom, and now they're ingesting parasite eggs. So there was an uptick in all kinds of disgusting things when this was going on. And people just were like, yeah, it's totally normal. And I'm like, this isn't normal. Like, read a study. And like I mentioned, Ryan Christian, thank heavens for him. The last American vagabond. He'll never know probably who I am. I shout him out constantly because his facts, he puts all of the studies at the bottom so you can link to them and go read them yourself. Some people, I'm sure that's confusing, but for me as a nurse, I was like, oh yeah, arm me with this so I can screenshot it and take it to work and show people, because no one believed me. They thought I was crazy. And I'm like, no, this is a JAMA study. This isn't, I mean, sure, I'll wear a tinfoil hat. You can give me one, but this is a JAMA study. And they're like, oh, wow, she's not crazy. And I had a couple doctors that were like, prove it. And I was like, ding, ding, there you go. You want me to send it to
nice.
you? Yeah.
So they were being pretty civil with you. They weren't ridiculing you
I wouldn't
at all.
say civil, but they were like, they knew I had really bad asthma, and they knew I had almost died a few times. So they were like, oh, we get it, but not for you. That's what they would always, oh, but not for you. And I'm like, no, not for anyone against their will. If they want to do it, great. Make it available. Cool. But like, why are you forcing it when more people die of other things every single year at a higher rate? What?
Yeah.
And then when was the last time you ever were like, if I don't go take antibiotics as a well person, you're going to get strep throat? That's insanity. That doesn't even make sense.
No, not at all.
That was the little things that I kept like, and that's the weird thing is that now, because I've been a nurse so long, I've been nurse 24 years, and I was medical my whole life until the last 6. I did ER, I did step down cardiac. I was really in it. I've even done labor and delivery, all kinds of stuff. And so my background is medical. So when all this started coming out, I was really in. I mean, I'm a dork anyway. I like love to read things, educate, whatever. I lettered in debate. Like, I'm all about that, even though I know I don't fit that mold, but I am. I love research. And so
no, I've seen some of your posts where you go to the mall to get books instead of,
yeah, I'm such a nerd.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm like, but I've always been that way. And now that I'm on a podcast, which is so weird because I never thought I would do anything like this in my life. But since I do this, it's like even more so now because I'm more passionate about finding facts because I never want to be the person that says, oh, and then blah, blah, blah. I'm really careful too about like when I share my personal experiences from growing up here, from being in the church, whatever it is, I always say, well, that's my personal experience, or this is a fact. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I listened to like a whole bunch of Mormon podcasts after I did my first two to kind of see how they presented and like know what, because I didn't know what to do. I never was on a podcast except all of a sudden I sent Josh Monday from the Christian Conspiracy Josh Monday show. And I said, you should look at this school. It's weird. Do a show. And he goes, I'm not there. You're there. You do a show. And I was like, no way. I'm just like a mom. Like, no. And he's like, you have all this stuff and you broke it down like Isaac Weishaupt or something. He's like, you know a lot of stuff. Just come on and say what you told me. And I said, no way. And so he talked me into it. And I had like my iPhone and my son's puzzle light for puzzling.
That's great.
That was my first like 5 shows were like that at my kitchen table. And I just was like, this is weird because I did 2 with him. And he said, you know how many hits they got? And I said, oh yeah, I saw it on YouTube. He said, no. Cause I didn't know about analytics. I didn't know about any of it then, like for podcasting. Exactly. And he goes, no, that you had so many people listen to you. You had like over 5,000 people download that show. And I was like, what? Yeah. I had no clue. I was like, nobody cares about my dumb little stupid opinion, you know? And he's like, well, that's the thing about you. You don't say opinions. You're talking about the history of the church with books and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that, you know? And he's like, yeah, you're one of the rare people I've seen do that because these other ones I've seen, they're like, yeah, my dad wouldn't let us eat at the table on Sundays and weird, whatever it is that they say. And I'm like, yeah, your dad was just a dick. You know what I mean? So is mine. Like, cool, but that's not what they teach. And my favorite, they all encourage you to beat your wives and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, that's not true. And so I almost felt like I had to say stuff then because I was like, no, none of this is true. You know, no. It was weird.
Yeah. And so, I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, the Catholic Church was never like that. What caught on to me when I was a young kid is when we had to like bow down to these bishops, and like my grade school was Immaculate Heart of Mary. We'd have a statue of Mary. We'd have a statue of this person. I'm like, what is it? You know what I mean?
I always thought it was so weird because I went, okay, so this is going to be a fun one. I'm a Mormon that lived in Mormonville that went to a Catholic school. This is such a weird
wow,
thing.
You did too. Okay.
Yeah. So I only went for 5th and a little bit of 6th grade because they had some gifted program and no one else had it. And so they pulled me into this school and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Fridays we're eating fish and going to mass. Like I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, this is weird, you know? And then I kept thinking, man, they do a lot of false idols in here. Like I was walking around like, this is really weird, you know, like all these statues and the cross. And I do love the cross because it's in the Bible. It's a little different, but I know they have a lot of different, you know, saints, and I learned all this stuff and it was great because I got to learn a lot of stuff I had no idea about. Like it gave me a little bit of insight, which was good for later in my life, obviously.
Now, did you actually, I was there, kindergarten through 10th grade. Did you actually enjoy the religion classes? Because I found them, at least in high school, as boring as can be.
They didn't do catechism for us in the school, except
it wasn't catechism. It was called religion. It was just called religion.
They did it like before or after school, I think.
Oh, okay. But we had an actual class.
Yeah. And you know what? I did that as a Mormon. I did seminary.
Wow.
So from 8th grade on, 8th or 9th grade, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, I did seminary. And so I have all these years of that too. And it's so wild. And I'm actually super glad now that I took it and I like graduated from it and the whole deal. Because now I look back and see all the stuff they've changed. I'm like, oh, that changed. this changed. Oh, we don't talk about Kolob anymore. What? And they won't admit these they're not going to ever do that. They're not, unless they're really big. If they're things they absolutely can't shove under a rug somewhere, then they'll come out with it. Like when I grew up, they never acknowledged that we were Freemasons, or like they don't say we're Freemasons now, but that Joseph was a Freemason. And so they came out now with this YouTube. It's kind of like, yep, Freemasonry is back in the day was a part of Mormonism, and it's really like I'll send it to you. It's hilarious. Sure. Like 10 minutes long. I want to see that. And it's just this funny video, like, yeah, you may have noticed, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, we noticed. And it was because the internet came out and they lost their minds. There was like this huge, I don't know for the Catholics, but there was a huge thing for Mormons, like, don't go Google this. Don't go Google that. Oh, if you have questions, go to your bishop. And then they came out with an actual, like a program, slogan that said, don't doubt your faith, doubt your doubts. And it was like a whole thing all over. And I was like, this is great. This is like, you just, as person with doubts, I was like, what is happening here? It just made more doubts, because then I was like, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to hide. That's why I'm very open. And I say, yeah, sometimes I cuss. Yeah, sometimes I'm this. Yeah, I'm not a perfect Christian. I fall short every single day. I know that. But I also know my beliefs are unshakable, like unshakable at this point. Like I have such a direct faith. I mean, I've almost died, like all these things twice, actually. Well, twice recently. And so I know what I know, and no one can take it. And that's, I'm that kind of person. But back then I was very malleable. Like I probably was like, oh, you shouldn't be on that website, Gina. What are you doing? I was super judgy and like weird. And now I look at who I am versus who I was at like when I was supposed to be perfect, the top of my game and in Mormonism. And I'm like, wow, I was a really bad person. Like I had no idea about helping my fellow man that good, or about, what the Bible really said, or certain things. And I got out and I went, whoa, you got a lot to do. You have some learning to do. And so I did. And I'm still learning every day. I hope I learn until the day I die, because once you stop learning, like, what's the point?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I know about with the Catholic Church, I know the grade school, the church that I went to, that was my grade school. When I was in like high school, they had, when I was still going there, like I think I was a senior or junior in high school, they had pamphlets in the back that said, the Catholic Church, the only pillar of truth. And then they put scripture. They put like one scripture, and then the next script showing that the Catholics are the only true,
right. Yes, the true and everlasting church.
And then if you look at the next scripture, it would totally contradict what they were, saying,
what they're about. Yeah. And that's Mormons too. They just they're upper echelon people. I think they're very concerned with their presence, like to be politically correct, which is really weird for a church. At least the Catholics are like, no, we don't do it like that. This is how we do it. Even if they don't do it that way, like they get caught in some scandal, they still stand by what they say, instead of saying, oh, that was a scandal, but that's his fault. But we don't think that way, but we're going to change this, and it's always something like that. And I'm like, you guys are so sketchy. Like that to me just makes you seem completely unreliable. I don't know.
I know what you mean. Like when I first, became a Christian, reading the word of God and all that, and became a Christian, I wanted to stay in the church and help them. And I'm like, okay, I'll join these groups. I'll join this. I'll join that.
Well, there's no other way, right? When you're growing, I mean, you just
that's what you think. And then you get in there and they're reading out of the catechism. And it was like, where's the Bible? Seriously.
That's exactly how Mormons are. They read directly out of the Book of Mormon, and any Mormon will tell you, like, I had this conversation last week at my work. Some guy came up to me and he's like, heard me talking to another girl about demons. And he said, there's no such thing as demons. And I said, oh, Really? Do tell me, do you believe in God? And he's like, of course. And I said, okay, well, if you believe in as above, so below, like there's hierarchy of things. Like, well, what do you think happened with everything then? And he's like, well, I'm just saying, I don't think there's demons. And I said, well, who about King Solomon's temple then? And he just looked at me. He had no idea what I was talking about. Zero idea. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, demons did. Why don't you go check it out? And he's like, no. And so he checks it and he's like, that's not even canon. That's a Jewish book, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but maybe you should know your own theology. Like, just saying. And he goes, well, the Bible is only true in as much as it's translated correctly. That is their favorite thing to say. And then he further proceeded to tell me Revelations was mostly a dream and the Bible is mostly a reference and really shouldn't be taken that seriously, and just read your Book of Mormon. So he's an elder in the church. And I'm like, if he sees this, he's gonna be
now,
like,
when you were in the Catholic school, did you have to go to like Friday masses or whatever
yes,
they had?
Yes. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I didn't have to take the sacrament, but I had to go up there. And I'm like, hey, and they knew I was like the Mormon kid, and they're like, just go. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to drink from that cup. I'm a germaphobe. I'm like, yeah, I'm not drinking from that.
Did you ever have to go to confession? We had confession once.
No confession.
In high school, we had confession, and no lie. This is what, and it's so funny because my dad was a pharmacist all over the city of Michigan we lived in. And so he was Catholic, so he knew a lot of the priests, and would, get them their medications and things like that. Well, this was one that my dad knew because it was from my dad's grade school. Well, so I go up to him for confession because they forced us to go into confession. Right. And you know what he told me? He goes, well, you need to walk 5 miles to your nearest church from your home and go to a confession on a Saturday. It made no sense whatsoever. I'm like, even as a teenager, I'm like,
you're like, I'm not really gonna do that.
No. Yeah, I got better things.
You're like, I've got a basketball game, you know what I mean? No.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's crazy that they want to replace Brennan. I don't know if you watch any of the Josh Monday shows, but Brennan goes on there with me on one of the Mormon ones, and he's so great. And he's like, they took that Jesus hung it all on the cross and there was no more middleman in all these religions, not just Mormons, but Catholics, other ones. And they put the middleman back and made it like, it's so stupid. He's like, literally Christ did this for us so this would stop. And then they took it and put it back. And I'm like, yeah, they definitely did. It's truth, and they have to. You and I both know why. Because without the middleman, how the heck are they going to keep you in line? How are they going to keep me in funny underwear, not drinking coffee? I mean, let's admit it. If they can control you down to your underwear, that's a lot of control. That's control. That is a ton. I mean, you can't even, I remember walking in like different stores and being like, oh my gosh, this smells like coffee. Ugh. Like, you're so judgy. You're like, I'm going to heaven and all you peasants are just suck, And I'm not saying everyone had that feeling, but they do that. I feel like a lot of Mormons do have that feeling because they make you feel superior, and that's wrong. That is so crappy and not biblical. That is not a Jesus thing. He would not. Yeah, he would not do that. Look at all his people and all his disciples that he took with him. They were like not good people. Okay. If you go on background, if you go on background alone, they were a bunch of hillbillies kind of, and they were just like the outcasts, and that's who he chose. And I always look at that because I'm like, did he take the Pharisees? No. Why? Yeah. And it just makes you wonder because that so much of that uppity, in your mind, like you're superior, then you become a different person. You're like, well, too bad for them because they brought that on themselves, or too bad for that situation. You're super not empathetic as much. I changed a lot, and it's like by miles and miles. Like my kids are always like, man, my 2 oldest kind of got nailed because I had these 2 kids when I was deep in the religion,
Oh.
And then I had a stepdaughter, and I
Mhm.
was really like Nazi mom with them, like, oh, this and this and this, and you got to go to all the meetings, and you have to have your room clean, because what if some Mormon lady shows up and wants to come in and visit and have a Sprite, because not
Yeah, good
coffee.
point. Oh,
But like, really, you feel like on edge a lot, and especially where I worked, I was already not like, they don't say you can't work. They also make it real clear that you probably shouldn't work.
wow.
They make you feel so crappy, especially if you're working on Sunday. Like, you should be in church, you should be in church, and nurses have to go to work whenever. Like, I can't, a lot of times I couldn't pick, like, if you're on call or
No,
whatever.
not at all, especially in that
Yeah.
profession.
And I'm like, that's so unfair to me. Like, and my husband felt the same way, because he had been involved in multiple Christian. Now, this is actually non-denominational Christian churches. And he's like, I felt really weird too, because I had these jobs where he rotates schedule and he can't control it. And they would be like, well, you should quit that job. And he's like, I love my job.
Wow.
Like, how many people love their job? Not very, I don't
Mhm.
know very many. I love my job. He loves his job. And so I'm like, yeah, that's bad. Like, why would they recommend you quit something you absolutely love and that you're good
Mhm.
at? It's weird,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. I'm with you. I went to a
Mm-mm.
non-denominational church too after I left the Catholic church, and there was a lot of, it was a mega church too, and there was so much
Yeah,
going
mega
on,
churches.
yeah.
You walk in and you're like, I am literally never going to be known here. I am literally a
No.
number. Yeah, this is not ever going to
And
be, I'm never going to be known.
I went as far as to take college classes that they had there, which were going to lead me to nothing. I hate to say that,
Right. Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
it's
going to
true.
get into youth ministry, you're going to do this,
Yep.
you're going to do that. And then, I mean, this was so big that they even had a cafe and a concert hall to
Oh,
bring in these
geez.
musicians. And some of these musicians are in the, it seems like they're in the cult too, even Christian.
Oh, and then you look at some of it and you're like, is this really worship, like, to
Yeah.
God? Like, or feels
Thank
like a
you.
performance, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying you can't perform for God, for real. You can, but
No.
there's a feeling about something that's for God and
Mhm.
something that's just for looks. Like, much like our podcast. Like, I'm very raw on my podcasts. I'm very,
Sure.
like, that's why I called Unfiltered Rise, because
Mhm.
I feel like my life was really hard and I rose above that. And I want to teach people you can rise above your situation. That does not hold you back. I hate when people say, well, I had a bad childhood, so blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? Well, if we want to talk about that, there's plenty of things I can tell you. By all rights, I should be a hooker down somewhere, like, I had a horrible life, and it's truth. And I always just felt like, you know what? No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep going,
Mhm.
because I don't want to be that. I don't want to, even as a Mormon, I at least had that. And so I don't feel like anything can keep people down. Like, I work in psych, and there's something called a ACEs score,
Mhm.
and it measures how much trauma you had as a child growing up. And it's a predictor of how much actual, and this is true, this part, physical problems you'll have as you're older, because trauma actually damages you physically. Like,
Mhm.
and they have like breakdowns of where, like, you have this much more incidence of asthma and this much more incidence of this and that. It's kind of interesting. But so they do that. And then they also say it's a predictor for like mental health issues, and that you won't like go to college and whatever. Well, there's only 10 questions, and I have 10 out of 10. It's extreme. Like, I don't know very many people that have passed 7, because they're pretty bad. They're like, was your parent in prison? Was your parent try to kill themselves? Did your parents try to kill each other?
Mhm.
It's like these horrible questions, or were you abused, or this or that? And I'm like, yep, all those things. And, I got married at 17 to a 25-year-old man. Um, I was a ward of the court by 12. I did not have a pleasant childhood.
Wow.
And I mean, it was bad enough that in the early 90s, they took me away from a mother. Like, that's
Wow.
That's pretty unheard of. They really didn't care, and I still was able to just keep going. I never stopped striving. I kept going to school. I ended up with my husband's daughter. Like, I was 17 and he's 25. And then something happened with his ex-wife and she had a stroke and we had to take her. And she was like 6 and I was 17. Like, I was only a little bit older than her, And so now I'm a mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I don't know what to do with it. I'm a mom, I guess. And we had her full time because her mom lived far away, clear in like Kentucky area. And so it was like a full-time deal. And then on top of it, I was going to college, I was working full time, and I got pregnant. And then I ended up with my cousin who was 13, who had all these behavioral issues and was going to be a ward of the court. And I just tell people, like, you know what? I don't regret any of it because all of it helped me grow and it was hard. And I probably didn't sleep those couple years I mean, I'd get off work and then we'd get off work at 6 a.m. and then class would start at 8 a.m. and we'd all go just drive to the parking lot. There was 3 of us that worked at the same place and we'd sleep in our cars and we'd knock on each other's windows if, one of us didn't wake up.
Yeah.
And you can do anything you put your mind to. Like, was it easy? No way. It sucked, but I also feel like it was really worth it. I mean, at the end of the day. So
no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, the roughest thing I had growing up, my parents were divorced, which it didn't, but I always wanted to live with my dad. My mom was fighting it. She even pulled me out of school. I remember she pulled me out of school and had me go to this mental health social services. And it was like a place where like foster kids who are on drugs went to talk to a social worker. And I'm like, well,
you're like, I don't belong.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I want to live with my dad. And so the social worker comes, you're in psych. Social worker comes, talks to both my parents, and he says, look, he wants to live with his dad. And she goes, he's brainwashing him. He's brainwashing him. And I mean, it was just,
you're like, no, I just know what I want. Yeah.
Finally, my dad had to go to court, and they, they kept on postponing it. And then I just had to go into the judge's chamber, and I said, look, this is when I had the Crohn's disease. So my dad's like, say that so I mentioned that I have Crohn's disease, and look, I can't deal with stress. So I want to live with my dad. It's stressful, where I'm living. And so the judge said that, bam, I was able to live with my dad.
But after a whole bunch of time, you've been there. Yeah, it's so hard because they don't listen enough. I feel like they don't.
Yeah.
And then they don't get involved fast enough. Like,
no,
I just barely did an interview with my sister's ex-husband. He was a polygamist. And when that whole thing happened with Warren Jeffs, he's actually Warren Jeffs' nephew, which is crazy. I know, my life, this is why it's perfect for podcasting. Stranger than fiction. Yeah. And so he had his kids taken because he was kicked out of that whole thing.
Okay.
And they moved him and he didn't know where they were, anything. They'll do that. And so he finally sees them on TV because they raided that compound. And he's like, those are my kids, So he goes there, files the CPS thing, and they took 42 days. And by the time it was done, it was too late because they had already given him back to their mother.
Wow.
Who was still in, and he was out. He was a far safer choice, and they just don't get on it. And we've had a CPS issue, like, from not us, but the other parent. And because I'm remarried. And so, and even with that, they didn't care. And it led my stepson down a really bad path. And then he just kept using drugs. It just kept continuing. We were trying to intervene. She wasn't as much. Of course, he wanted to be with her then, and honestly, he kept doing it until he had a full mental breakdown. And I'm like, hello, like, you guys knew this for years. And I'm not saying it's all her fault. I'm just saying, like, what would have happened had they intervened when we brought it to him? What would have happened for you if they had intervened when it first became a thing? But they don't. They get paid. They want you there they get paid for you being in that
Mhm.
system. And same thing with psychology. I'm like, it helps people, but also I feel like there's a huge movement about cutting people off now. Like, oh, you don't need your parents. I'm going to go live my best life and they hinder my life. So get rid of them, because my daughter did that. And I'm like, okay. And a therapist led her to it. And I'm like, instead of resolution and fixing this and having parents in your life, now you have none and
Yeah.
not much family.
Good
You're going
point.
to need that therapist forever. That's
Mhm.
what they're doing, because you don't have your family. So you now pay them to be your family,
Yeah, I know what you
it's
mean.
weird, but it's money is lucrative. Anything that involves money, I'm always like, oh my gosh, especially if it's like a long-term thing, because yeah, people are not always honest. Don't we wish they were? But
No,
it is.
not at all. And I think we've all overcome, a lot of things, like
Yeah.
when I was growing up, and even in my early 20s, I was still living with my dad, and he always thought, oh, he's never going to get out of the house. He's going to be living with me forever. He's going to like, great guy,
Right.
great guy. But I get what he was saying. And I left at 24 and he was
Yeah.
100% supportive. He's like,
The
I'm like,
ideals,
I gotta get, I was in, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a smaller city, and I'm like, it's not for me, you know.
right.
And so
Yeah.
he was totally supportive, but he never thought that. Sometimes it's the mentality of family or
Yeah.
whatever getting to you, saying, "Hey, you're never going to do this. You're never going to do this," and
Yeah. Yeah.
wanna,
You're never going to
yeah,
amount to anything or whatever. And I'm like, don't tell that to people. Like, do you know
no,
there's
not
so
at
many
all.
people in the end of their lives that do things that they never thought they would do,
No,
like become like doctors or lawyers or whatever, or write books. Like, many people don't start any of that till they're fully matured in their 30s. Let's be real. And I'm not saying live at home forever. I'm just saying my oldest stayed home until she was 24. And,
yeah,
we didn't care. I mean, we were
no,
like,
I'm
okay,
with you.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, do whatever you need to do. I mean, and we've never really been big on throwing them out the door, because if they're not ready, then they're just not ready. I
No,
mean,
yeah.
and people definitely talk about you can tell. So, you know, more and more it's accepted. I feel like it's changed a lot. But back when so my oldest, they're older, they're 27 and 24. So I could tell sometimes people would be like, oh, she's still living at home. The way they say it.
Mhm.
Oh, they're still at home then. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, not in a hurry to have
No,
her
there's
go
nothing
live with
wrong with that.
10 other people so that she can struggle. Like, why? They're fine. Yeah, I'm just not big on that. I feel like you
Especially in
really,
today's time,
yeah. Oh, how are you going to afford anything anymore?
I know.
We look at that and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like our kids, one of our kids is not married, but they're very together and they're having a baby and they live with roommates. And somebody said something like, oh, well, I could never live with roommates and have a baby. I'm like, well, welcome to now. How do
Mhm.
you live in a house without having a roommate anymore? I don't really
No,
know.
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's sad unless you get it given to you or your trust fund kid or something. Like, well, that's not most people's lives, especially starting out or going to school. How do you even afford that? It's wild. And do you wait till you're 40 to have a kid then? Like, that doesn't sound good to me.
Not at all. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, not that there's nothing wrong with that, but
No, not at
if you,
all. Hey.
yeah, if you want more than one and you're a woman, you're pushing it. You're 40 and having kids, unless
Yeah.
you're rich. You can say you're having a baby and somebody's really carrying it for you.
Yeah.
Who knows? Whatever.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a wild ride, but that's life for you. I mean, growing up here, it was very indoctrinating. Everyone here is Mormon. Like, I would say you might meet 1 in 10, and that's being generous. And that's now. Back in the day, it was more like 1 in 20. And people were really weird, like, oh, you're not Mormon, or your parents are Jack Mormon, or you smell like cigarettes. My kids can't play with you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, it was like not, yeah, they were really super judgmental.
No, I
And
think it
so,
was the same way where I was because it was predominantly Catholic and Christian Reform being West Michigan, and it's funny
mhm.
because My sister, when she got out of high school, she went from Catholic school to Christian Reformed college because she wanted to stay at home because her boyfriend was in town. And they're like, "You're going to a Christian Reformed school?" You know?
Yep. It seems like it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on so many things. And that's why I said to you before we started, I will never be another member of a church. Like, it doesn't mean I wouldn't go for the camaraderie or to praise God or any of that for a time or once in a while. But my church is God and the Bible, and that's about all, because the rest of it, you just can't, it's man, and man is fallible. It's just, I mean, all of us are. If I started a church, I'm fallible. I'm going to screw it up. Like, that's just the way it is. And so it's one of those things. What do you do?
I know exactly what you mean. Now, when did you first become a nurse?
So I became a nurse. Let's see. I was 23, right? Yeah, 23. So I have been a nurse 24 years. So I'm 47.
Now, what has changed the most in your profession?
They have actually now integrated the brainwashing into nursing. I have widely seen that now, instead of, they used to teach us, use your critical thinking skills. Don't bother the doctor at home. Unless you've already thought about, like, oh, this person's nauseated. Did you think about what you want ordered? Did you think about what medication would help them? What do you want? What are you asking for? We don't just call the doctor and say, they're nauseated, tell me what to do, right? We call and say, hey, if you're at a place that can do IVs, can I get an IV, and can I get, some IV meds for them, like specific ones? Or if you're not able to do IVs, you can get PO meds for this. You tell them what you kind of want, right? Like, hey, I want some Zofran, repeat it times 1 and reevaluate this tomorrow or for the next 3 days, whatever. And they go, especially because I work at night. And so, yeah, they're not with it in the middle of the night. Go figure, they're humans too, So they wanted us always to use our critical thinking skills and present it to the doctor and the vitals and the different things and go from there. Now they don't want us to do that. They want us to call the doctor and just say, what do we do? Because we're stupid. And it's so annoying. It's like, oh, even the other day at my work, they said, hey, do not recommend specific medications to patients because their doctor will pick that. And I'm like, what if their doctor didn't know about that one?
Yeah.
And we don't see the doctors because it's middle of the night. So I did, funny enough, that night, some guy came up to me and he said, yeah, this medication I think is making me messed up and it's making me tired in the morning and I need to sleep, but I also can't feel like I'm hungover. And I said, yeah, that sounds like side effects. And I would recommend some other medications for you, but I've been told not to. So I have to tell you to go to speak to the doctor, because literally they want to just cut our legs off now. They don't want us thinking. And the new nurses don't. Like, you'll come in and talk about, oh, and you give this for this, or that helps this, or will help this, like on a side effect type thing. It's really not meant. Like, if you give people Demerol when they're coming out of surgery, because you get the shakes after surgery, it will stop that. But it's not meant for that. It's not marketed for that. It's not made for that. They don't know that anymore. They're like, what? And it's just, it's like blank stares. And I'm just like, oh, you guys are just the brown coats. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's just sad anymore. They're just there to follow orders. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm not from that era, because I'm not going to be that kind of nurse. And when it gets to the point where I can't be a normal kind of nurse like I am, then I won't be a nurse.
Yeah. And I can relate, working the 4 years that I worked in a pharmacy, because it was so much for profit. Like, we would have to call on weekends. Like, a lot of them were elderly patients saying, would you like to get your prescription refilled? Right. But it would be one that they're no longer taking. And they'd be so confused that they'd be like, yeah, refill it. It's just so sad. Or people coming in desperate for their meds, whether it be like a pain medication, they become desperate for their meds, right? And this was like, I forget what it was. It was a muscle relaxer, something that wasn't a necessity.
Wasn't like a true,
It's so funny because the store manager wrote me up because I wouldn't help them out, because the whole pharmacy techs wouldn't help them out. I was just a pharmacy associate at the time. He writes me up for not helping her. The pharmacist wouldn't fill it because she can't. You know, it's just a muscle relaxer. And this was on like a Memorial Day. It was on a holiday.
It's not even a narcotic or anything. You're like, do you know what they did with those muscle relaxers? Most of them after the fact, not the newish ones, not the ones that cost a lot, but the old ones that cost nothing and work far better. They put them all as narcotics now.
Wow.
Yeah. They're like a freaking oxy. No. Like they're in the same category. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I mean, they're not. It doesn't make any sense. And you're just standing there going, no. And of course, you know, they're just watching everything. And then they want to recommend the ones that they're getting kickbacks on, because you know it happens.
Oh,
and
definitely.
And then they're like, oh, well, don't recommend that drug because that drug's not on my chosen formulary this month. I think that's why it's happening at my job, because they're like, don't recommend meds, but they're going to recommend the meds. And I'm like, oh, it's probably they have specific ones. I see, because they change every few months. Like 1 month we'll see one drug ordered for nausea all the time. And 1 month it like popped up Compazine. That is so old. I haven't given that in like 15 years. Like, really?
Yeah, I remember the name.
Yeah. And I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, this is the one we're using this month. And I was like, that's weird. Why? And then the next month it'll be back to like whatever else, like Zofran or something, you know, normal. And I'm like, that seems like weird. Why would you do that all of a sudden? You know, I thought the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, they must not be able to take the other ones some reason. Nope. Everybody for this doctor. And then the other doctors will come in and follow them because they work like so many days. And then the other doctor will come in. They'll change everything to their formulary and then they'll change it back again. And it's like this little game. And I'm like, what are we doing? This is not good for people, especially with psych meds. Like you're messing with people's mind. And I'm like, this is probably not a good plan. Like, why are you doing this to patients? We are in a critical situation because we don't take him long term. We're a short term mental facility. So, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But I have to watch it at my job because I get in trouble because I'm like always saying things. So they don't love me there. My patients do.
Yeah. But do you think it's coming back to you know, bite these pharmacies? Because like people are staying, like the CVS and Walgreens are having pharmacists walk out.
I think that what's happening is they just don't care. They'll find a brand new grad.
Exactly.
You know, what's happening with our nursing staff is they have come out and they're like, well, we don't care. You're going to do this way. And they've replaced them all the ones that have left that are really good nurses, which you need critical thinking people. There's no doctor there in the middle of the night, not one. Yeah. So you need some critical thinkers for when the crap hits the fan, because sometimes they have heart attacks. They're not there for that. Right. And you've got to be able to know what to do and help them efficiently. And they don't do it. And they've got these house supervisors that are over nurses like me and other nurses that have been nurses almost 30 years or longer. And they're telling us things and we're like, yeah, no, that's not how it is, you know, and we still have to mind them. And it's so strange. And I just think they don't care because they'll get a new grad to take our place. Yeah. They'll get somebody that'll do it. And that's the problem. And that's why it's scary, because like I don't know that any of these people have your best interest at heart anymore. You have to self-educate. If you are a person that just trusts your doctor blindly, you are foolish anymore. It's sad and it's scary that I have to say that, because there's a lot of great doctors out there. I have a wonderful physician, but I still look into everything he does. Like if he's going to give me something or whatever, you know, I'm going to check, but I'm a researcher. So for me, that's normal. Yeah. And we have all of it at our fingertips. Like we have the power of a pharmacist on just one Google away. Right. And you can look up every side effect. You can look up everything, and people just don't. they just are like, oh, well, this is what it is. And I'm like, no, there's probably 40 different things you could do otherwise. Like you can check, they don't. And it's sad because people trust, and that gets people into trouble, not just with meds, with the world, with the government, with churches, with medicine, with everything. I question everything, but I mean, that I didn't always. At one point in my life, definitely I did not do that.
No, I know when I was
No.
young and I had the Crohn's, I couldn't. Luckily, when I was taking the prednisone, I had such a bad reaction that they took it, and this was like 7th grade, that they took it off right away, which was a blessing. Finally, when I was like
Right.
24, that's when I was still taking this Asacol, which did nothing for me,
Right.
and I just stopped taking it. And I was getting sick again because I was living in Chicago and eating that trash Chicago food. That's what was doing it. And it was funny when I went to the county hospitals, they're like, one time I went for a colonoscopy and I was there for 6 hours, and they said, well, if you leave, and they hadn't seen me. And I said, I'm just going to leave. You're not going to see me. And they said, well, if you don't stay, we might still charge you. And luckily they didn't, but that's how bad it's gotten in the,
it's still a thing. If you leave AMA, even now, especially like mental hospitals, we do this all the time. We have to tell them, yeah, your insurance may likely and probably will charge you for this visit. Like, not at the discounted insurance price.
I know.
It's like full price. And most people don't have money like that. Some people have, so you can tell which ones do, because they're like, get my phone, I don't care. And you're like, oh, all right, cool. But like most people are like, oh my gosh, this might be like $5,000, they don't want to do that. That's not wise. But yeah, that in nursing has really been disappointing to see a complete flip-flop of nurses were like literally knowledgeable and very you could go to any nurse and say, what about this or what about that? And they could tell you things. And now they're just like, oh, I don't know. You should ask a doctor.
I know what you mean.
Like,
yeah.
Sad. Other than that, just the way healthcare reforms have been in general, it's hard. It's hard to work around anything because I became I want to be a nurse and help people. I chart all night long. That's what I do.
Yeah.
My job is like this much people, like probably 3 hours of actual patient talking, being there around them. And then the rest of the 9 to 10 hours are spent just charting. That's all I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's sad because that's not really helping people. That's just helping you. That's helping you get a lot of money, but that's not helping them. And sometimes that's really disheartening. A lot of people leave for that, and I get it. But at the end of the day, I'm always like, well, maybe the one thing you say could help or whatnot. I'm always that hopeful, like, oh, maybe, but it is hard. I actually changed into mental health about 5 to 6 years ago because my brother died of an accidental overdose.
Oh, wow.
And that was really hard. And I tried my best to help him the way I thought I knew how at the time. But now I feel like with the knowledge I have, I was like, okay, you probably can help somebody in this instance. And especially he was out of the Navy. And these are a lot of them. We have 4 floors of veterans or active duty, military. A lot of them are active. And we get also CIA, NSA, people like that. And, talking to them about like how my brother a little bit, I mean, I can only say a little bit because they actually get mad at that too.
I know. Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. And we can't touch them either. We can't hug them. We have to just fist bump. And it's just really gotten weird. I mean, when somebody's falling apart in front of you, bawling because they just got like a cancer diagnosis or something terrible, and you just got to fist bump them. Really?
Yeah.
That's not what I went into it for. That's for sure.
Now, throughout your career, has there always been this big governmental, push in medicine and health? Because you see, all these ads like on YouTube and stuff, .gov, healthcare.gov, healthcare, sign up for this thing, which is like comparable to like an Obamacare and stuff. They're obsessing.
Yeah. I think it changed I want to say the biggest change in things and something that affected people actually horribly, I feel like, even though my brother died of an opioid overdose, he didn't. He died of benzo involvement because he couldn't get opioids for an actual problem that he had that they put him on in the first place. So, like, the big change in the 2000s after the whole OxyContin thing, they used to give that for everything. And that was also ridiculous. Okay. There was like, that part was like overboard and they were doing too much that way. Now they don't do anything and they are like, oh, you're dying. Cool. Here's a Tylenol, and the government is just involved in all of it, where they like control all these little games. Like you said, like, it's not on the money side that way, but like they get a control where the dynamic is. Like before, oh, we're killing people because we're giving them too much. Oh, now we're hurting people and they're breaking into pharmacies because they literally are dying of pain. So like, why can we never find here? Why is it always like here or here? We can never get in the middle. It's like, do people not understand regular life? Like, why can't we just be normal? When you're like halting even Ultram, you're halting even Ultram. You don't even halt it for dogs. Like, when you give your dog a surgery now, they give you like sedatives, but they don't give you pain meds for them other than ibuprofen. And why? Because people were stealing their dogs' pills. This is how desperate people have gotten. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should look at that, because there is a threshold to pain where I get it. Because I've been in pain like that, because I've had cancer and I've had a baby at home and I know what that feels like, and it sucks. Like, if I had to, I don't think I'd hold up a store because I don't believe in hurting people, but I get it. Like, I get why they're pushing people to that point, and it's all a little game. It's like, where do we want to put them on the scale today? What do we want them to do today? Right? Just like with the injections, what do we want them to do today? What are we willing to do for them? Oh, it's free. No, it isn't. It's coming out of your taxes and my taxes, and I didn't take one. So that's super unfair. Like, they do these things. And I'm like, the government's hands are in every part of our healthcare, but we're not supposed to have that. We're supposed to not be like that because we're America, right? It doesn't feel like America to me.
No, not at all.
No.
Now, what do you think about these booster shots? Do you think a lot of people are rejecting them, and that's why they're shoving out these celebrities and such to try and sell them?
They did a full recombination of the shot. They are actually saying this isn't a booster. This is brand new thing. And that if you took any of the rest of them, throw them out the door and come get this anyway. And I'm like, wow, okay, because they're trying to reinvent the wheel once again because it failed. And everybody's like, yeah, I took that shot and I got COVID 77 times. Like, not really, but everybody I know that's had that shot has had COVID more than once. Oh, yeah. Everybody I know that hasn't has had it once. And this is my personal experience, nobody else. Okay. My personal experience has been everybody I know that hasn't had that has had it one time. Everybody else keeps getting it. And I'm not really sure why, but I am, and I think that they want it to be another thing so that they can get a new patent, more money. It's a new medication. You're going right back to where we started from so they can get the full, because most people don't know this. When you invent a drug, you might know this because you're dad. If I invent something today and I give it to the government, I say, I have this really good drug and it does whatever. They have to give me money. And that's why there's only brand name drugs available for that for 5 to 7 years. I remember
that. Yep.
And then after that, they can do a generic. But before that, they make tons of money. So what they did, and they've done this on multiple things, and same thing as these boosters. We'll do an example that I know for sure because I take them, my inhalers. All of a sudden, one day I went to go get my dumb inhalers and they were a fortune and they were like so cheap. And I'm like, what is going on with these inhalers? Oh, they're not. The chlorofluorocarbons are killing the universe and you can't be breathing that out into the world. So you have to make them better and you can't be doing that. And I'm like, wait a minute. People smoke cigarettes. and breathe stuff out into the world. But I can't have my medicine that's going to save my life, and now I have to pay a fortune. No, what happened was that had been on the list for so long that they were no longer making any bank off of it, and they changed the formulary for every single inhaler available on the entire market.
Oh,
The
I
entire
remember
market.
that. Yeah.
And then all of us that have to breathe, this isn't a choice here. This isn't some kind of choice. We die without it. And then they did it for EpiPens. And how corrupt are you? How corrupt are you that you would do that to people that literally, it's like, you're going to do it. You're going to pay for it because you're going to die without it. Like, what are we supposed to do? And they do these things. And I'm just like, really? And I think that's exactly what's going on with the boosters. And they're trying to remarket it and make it look better because it failed. Everyone knows it. Like, you talk to anyone, whether you had the shot or not, everybody got COVID. Everybody.
Yeah. And a lot of people I talk to say my doctor is not even recommending the booster, but that was like back in September. So I don't know what's going on now.
My mom has autoimmune issues, but her doctor too agreed not to do it. A lot of my doctor has never brought it up again with me. I'm seeing less of it. And like, okay, when I would go to work, when we were in the midst of everything forever, there was still masks forever. There was still all these things we had to do with the patients, like twice a day, do a COVID questionnaire. Do you have a cough? Do you have a fever? Do you have this? Do you have that? Who the crap cares? They're going to tell you if they're sick. I mean, why are we doing it for everyone? Just do it by exception. If the person comes up to me, then I chart it. But no, we're not doing it like that. And this stuff went on forever. And then we had these thermal imaging temperature machines that never worked, by the way.
Yeah, I remember trash. We had them at our work. It was
and they put them in, they were a fortune. And then all of a sudden they're like not using, like they're just turned off and everything now. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. And so all of it ramped down, and now they're not asking about the shots anymore. They're not offering about the shots anymore at my work. So that's all I noticed. Like, that's just my experience, but I've noticed, kind of like you, that they're not really pushing it like they did.
What do you think was up with them saying in August that they're gonna bring back the mandates and nothing happened?
I was so scared too.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I was like worried because it's just such a nightmare, and I just don't want to go. It's like you get PTSD almost from it.
I know.
I think you're going to see a lot of weird mental health stuff from people going through this, especially kids later. And they've already had such bad learning problems and all that. But yeah, I think in general, just they want to scare us. I think they always want us like on the tip, like of the brink of a breakdown, but also it's revelation of the method. And so I'm like, well, they're going to do it at some point. They're just not going to let it. It's not going to be before an election. So I knew it wasn't going to happen in November because they would crucify the next president. So they'll wait.
I thought they would. Yeah.
They'll wait until they lock in whoever they're locking in. And then once they do that, they'll do what they want. It goes back to digital IDs. There's no way this is about COVID. There's no way.
It's 100%. You hit it right on the nose. Yeah.
Yep. They have to do something because Americans are going to go, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not going to do it. And they have to make it worth it enough to push it enough, but they're definitely not doing it until they secure a new president. No way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, they'll do it like a year out, probably. I don't know. That's my guess. That's my best guess. But they're always manipulating everything, and people believe it. And I'm like, why? My mom used to be this way, and I'm so glad she's not now because she listens to me a lot on the podcasting. And I'm like, why did you wait to listen to me till I was on a camera? Like,
point.
I would have been on a camera before if you would have listened to me, like I wish you wouldn't have had that shot, but yeah, and you can't go backward. What do you do about that?
No.
But it's just sad. I see a lot of things it's almost like the side effects I'm seeing personally in my personal realm are older people that maybe would have got this, like say a brain tumor or something, right? It's like so fastly accelerated, or like if they were going to get Parkinson's, it's like happening and it's so fast acceleration, or muscular, MS or whatever. Just all these things I'm seeing, and they're like, seem to be like at a rapid rate and killing people kind of quickly. And then definitely I'm seeing a lot of heart attacks. And that's in my personal circle. Like people that were driving their car. This happened in my neighborhood, driving their car and died and crashed because they had a heart attack. And it was like, just barely had the booster, just barely. And I'm like, and when I tried to say something, because they texted me, because people know I'm a nurse, they don't know my stance on the jab.
No,
They're like, and I said something. I said, you might want to look at the side effects that came out on the 13th, Friday the 13th from Pfizer.
wow.
And she just was like, that's not true. He probably had COVID. I'm like, I'm sure he will have COVID, whether he has COVID or not, on his death certificate.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's a
They're
given.
covering it up. This is going to be just like Tuskegee. And my thing is like, go look at these things that have happened. And Tuskegee is not the only thing they've done to us. Operation Sea Spray, Tuskegee event, like all these different things. And they do it over and over. And when they get caught, you know what they do is they go, oops, sorry, I'll resign. Okay, what about all the people you killed? Most people go to prison for that, and they don't care. Just like the opioids that they were giving for, I'm not against opioids. I think they should treat pain. I think there should be criteria. I don't think we should be giving it for headaches, Oxycontin 80. Okay, I've seen some crazy stuff, but like also we should be giving that for like people that are in dire pain, and have like end of life stuff or post-surgical, not necessarily Oxycontin, but like opioids, and all this stuff has changed so rapidly, one to the other. You just never know where you're at. And it's all who's lining their pockets. Let's be honest. I can't believe they keep that Purdue show. What's it called? It's on Netflix. It's a Purdue show. It's about what happened with Oxycontin. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's all true. And I'm like, I watched it and I was like, I can't believe this is on TV. I was like, holy crap. And I just sat there and went, yep. Because it's all about whoever is in charge at that time. It's like, oh, okay. Pain's out. Shots are in. Flu's back. Oh, what happened to the flu? When we all had COVID,
Oh, those latest commercials that you see it like on YouTube, because sometimes you're stuck with the YouTube ads.
Yeah.
And it'll be for like Walgreens saying get 2-in-1, get your flu shot and your COVID booster.
Go get it right away from a person. Probably even you said they can grandfather text in. Go get it from the tech that probably doesn't 100% understand if you do have a side effect or reaction, and pray to God you don't die. Like that's ridiculous. They shouldn't be just handing these things out with the side effects that like they were doing it through drive-thrus and people were passing out.
They weren't even doing inserts in there, were they? They didn't even have vaccine inserts of the ingredients.
There still is not. There is still not. They are blank. They are in there. They are blank.
That's right.
In 24 years of nursing, I have never seen that. Never.
That's unreal.
You should know what you're sticking yourself with. And like this is also a fun fact. I don't know if you know this, but this is truth. So when they emergency authorized that shot, they came out with a brand name for it, right? And that's
I remember that.
Yeah. So that brand name is the only one they could do the mandates on, right? Comirnaty.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was never made or manufactured or available, and still is not available anywhere in the United States at all. So the only mandate they can do is for Comirnaty, because you cannot emergency force like emergency authorized medication. Only medications that are approved by the FDA, but you can't approve. It's not the same to have emergency authorization as FDA approval. And people don't understand this. They are very different things, and it's a very different process. And they've even admitted that the ingredients in the emergency authorized ones are not identical to Comirnaty, but Comirnaty is not available. So they've done this little loophole where they've kind of covered their ass, but they never gave out one dose of the Comirnaty, and all of our military was forced, but that's illegal because it wasn't FDA approved. And they'll all have cases, but watch and see. Nothing will ever come of this. Nothing.
No.
Because they did this with the H1N1 as well. And that vaccine was really dangerous for a lot of people. And they still did it. That it's something about whatever they did in that particular one, the way they, mixed it, it was super dangerous, and they still forced it, and they still try. And
Jeez.
It's just, I'm surprised and shocked at like the things they've been able to do, because it used to be like, well, they can't do that. They would never be able to do that. Well, they did.
Wow.
They have, and they continue. And here we all sit like, oh, and it definitely feels like, and for sure, when we were going through 2020, it felt like the mark of the beast, because if you didn't have one, you weren't doing anything.
No, it was getting to that point. It really seemed like it.
I mean, I was freaking out because I was like, who's going to go grocery shopping for me or whatever? Because they were being crazy about that stuff. And I was just like, this is getting scary. And I mean, I don't know. I know it wasn't the mark, but I'm just saying, like, how it says if you don't take the mark, that you wouldn't be able to integrate into society anymore, or buy and sell. It totally felt that way. And I was like, this is weird, But I will say this, they broke a lot of things with that, because mentally they changed the whole world. Like mentally, they isolated people to a point where like teenagers are not the same anymore. They don't go, I have teenagers. They don't go out. They stay home and they wear pajamas. And I'm like, son, why aren't you going out? Like with girls or your friends or whatever. And he's like, oh, but we talk, or we're on Snapchat, or we're on this, or we're on that. And I'm like, yeah, that's not the same as hanging out.
Not at all.
I mean, it's okay, but like, how are you going to date that way? It's one more step closer to AI, because they don't want them dating, because they want them to have an internet robot girlfriend, like,
oh, I know
so
exactly
they don't
what
procreate. Yeah. And it's just, I'm watching it all and going, no, that's not the way you want to do things. And luckily, I talk to him a lot, but still they all follow suit. It's very strange. Like how we would get dressed up and go to the mall or go to the movies, all that. No, they don't do that anymore. They buy all their clothes online. Yeah. And if they don't buy them online, here's the even better. They buy them at the thrift stores, whatnot. This is a really big thing. Like, it's like hobo chic, I call it. They all want to look like Kurt Cobain. Everyone sloppy heroin chic, and I'm like, why are you wearing pajamas everywhere? What are you doing? You look like you just got up, Used to be a thing to dress up and go to dinner. Used to be a thing to go to the grocery store. I'm still that way. I won't go. I won't go if I look crazy. There's no way. I'm not doing it.
I would never.
I mean, I'm going to look like I at least showered and stuff. Come on. Sometimes I go after the gym, but I'm still put together, like I don't look crazy. And these kids will do anything that way. It's like they took away that part of, like, that's almost a self-esteem thing too. Because if you never get ready for anything, like, and you don't go anywhere or whatever, like, who cares, right? Because you're just sitting at home in your PJs. What? It's so weird to me.
That's crazy.
It's weird. It's kind of sad. Like,
yeah,
I think, and a lot of people have really felt alone, and then they like broke up families over this. Like, I know our family went through some stuff because they were like weird about that shot, and they were like, well, sorry, we're having a birthday, but you're not vaccinated, so you could have germs, And I'm like, yeah, who has the germs now? You guys have all had COVID 32 times, like, I'm like, I don't know. But I also know this. They have rabies shots and different things for animals that shed, and those vaccines have been proven to shed, and they can shed off onto other animals and like help them gain immunity. And you can't tell me they're not doing that. I almost guarantee they are. And it's if they want to do something, they're going to do it. We're not going to know.
No, not at all. Yeah.
It's kind of frightening. It's really, but I don't live in fear because I believe in God and we just pray a lot. But like, we're at their mercy. Like, where does our food come from? Where does our everything come from? It's, you can't, even if you go organic 100%, there's still weird stuff that they do to it.
Oh, for sure. Even like that appeal. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard of that
Yeah. I saw
appeal
that. Yeah.
produce. That's that coating.
And I'm like, look, there's probably like, okay, even just let's take away chemicals, even just the way they hybrid mutate things. Like, real bananas have seeds in them, like tons of seeds, big seeds. And like other fruits have these big seeds, and like watermelons anymore. How many do you see that have seeds? Like all this stuff that they've mutated and they've changed it so drastically. Like, and real bananas are like this big. They're very tiny.
Yeah.
And they have all these seeds in them. And it's really weird. But they say those seeds are like super healthy for you, like really, really, really good for you. So of course they're going to hybrid them out. They hybrid everything out. And then all that's left is just a bunch of sugar in them and stuff, I mean, it's fructose and not sucrose, but still it's weird. And our country's the worst one. If you go to another
I believe
country,
it. Yeah.
well, they allow things here like the dyes in the food. They don't allow that in other
That's not in the
countries.
EU. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been all over and the food tastes different. I've been to Paris, I've been to Italy. The food tastes different and the Cokes
So many
taste
people
different.
say the same. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. Their fruit is amazing, and instead of on the corner, every corner a McDonald's, every corner is a freaking fruit stand and a bread stand, and people say there that they can eat the bread and not get sick and not have these gluten issues that they have here. And I'm like, there is more than just meets the eye on this. And the fact that Bill Gates is now the largest farm landowner.
No, that's not a coincidence whatsoever.
Terrifying. And that he has all those ancestry seeds all locked up in that freezer thing back in Antarctica or somewhere. I don't know where he keeps them. It's somewhere weird like that. But I'm just like, okay, that's not sus at all. You took all the weird seeds and then locked them away and then bought all the land and use your weird modified stuff. Okay. Yeah, that feels safe. That super feels safe.
And have you heard of mRNA and some of the foods? Like they came out and said this Aero Farms microgreens have you seen that video?
No.
It's called Aero Farms microgreens. If you see it, I would avoid it. It's got a big QR code on it. It says non-GMO. It doesn't say organic. It says non-GMO, sustainable, and then it says like, harvested indoors, like upright, something like that, something really weird. And I'm like, no.
You're like, that doesn't sound normal. Yeah. I think they're doing a lot of things to a lot of different things. And back to our discussion about the weed, like, what are they doing to that? If you're buying it at these pharmacies that are now state and government controlled.
Yeah, you
what
hit
are
it
they
right
doing
on the
to
money
that
on that.
too?
It's no longer natural.
No, nothing is. And I think that's the problem. Like it's really frightening because because I work in mental health, I've seen a lot of kids coming in that have full-blown psychosis just from weed. That shouldn't happen. Also, they get really addicted to it, like meth addicted to it. And I've never seen that with anything else in my life other than, real drugs. And I'm like, what's going on with that? That's weird. It shouldn't be like that. And it makes you question like, well, what is in there that's causing that? But here again, we have no idea. How would we know?
No.
I mean, that just seems so very strange to me because I'm like, I'm a thinker and I think most of the people don't really think about that. And then we're at their mercy. Even if you grow your own food at home, however you want to do it, they're still spraying the skies constantly, more than I've ever seen. All the
time.
Yeah, it's like it's amped up so big. And I'm like, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They make like freaking star patterns and X's and do it all day. Like you used to see it maybe once during the day and it was like a quick flyover and it was like that was all for the day. Now it's like all day, We were camping and it was literally like 8 hours we watched these planes go over, and it was because they were straight over a big field of cattle. And I'm like, well, I'm sure that's not a coincidence. I mean, they're spraying the cattle, and who knows what they're doing to them. Like, it just makes you wonder, like, it doesn't make me wonder. It makes us know why Americans are the fattest, most unhealthy, autoimmune issues up the wazoo, more allergies than anyone else.
Yeah.
All this stuff is in our food. Like, what are you supposed to do? And even if you get it, like you said, all natural, whatever, like, you never know. Like, how do you know?
No, not at all. Even the word all natural is deceiving. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's like, it's really, they've really found ways around things to make money. And that's the end of the day. That at the end of the day, that's what they care about. And if they keep us all sick, then they make a lot of money, period. They don't want us healthy. Look at our ancestors. They didn't have nearly as many diseases and problems as we do, other than occasionally people would drop dead of heart attacks, and that's going to happen regardless. A lot of that's genetic. I mean, to be honest, like cholesterol and stuff, they make such a big deal about it. And a lot of it is genetic. And I don't always agree with the treatment, because if you look into the side effects for that too, it's like sixes, I don't know. Diet and exercise, and do what you can that way. I take what I have to. I don't have a thyroid, so I do what I can to stay away from a lot of the rest. But yeah, it is what it is.
And I see in America too, especially where I live, there's fast food on every corner. We have like 5 Chick-fil-A's. And the funny thing is people actually think Chick-fil-A is healthy. They're like, the Chick-fil-A CEO is Christian. No, they got drugs in that. They've said there's like 100 ingredients in there,
I don't think that there's any place. Yeah. What place really do you go? Even the salads. How many times do you go and eat a salad and they're like, recalled 10,000 different organisms were on that salad. Sorry. And you're just sitting there going, what? You can't even be safe with that.
No.
And so, I mean, I pray a lot over my food, because I think I'm not saying throw in the towel and eat McDonald's for every meal, but I'm just saying there's some things we're not going to avoid.
No, I know what you mean.
How? Yeah, it's sad. It's like, and we don't even know if they're just slapping the organic sticker on mine and the not one on yours or whatever, and just lying to us. Yeah, who knows? They lie about everything else. I mean, if they get caught, they'll go like this. Sorry, we were wrong. Or there was a mix up, and the stickering, like, they always have some way around it. So silly.
Are you seeing that the FDA and the, organic certification do not have our best interests in heart? Come on.
Right. Come on, people. What they know, if they really cared about us, like they say they do, then insulin would be free. Period.
I'm with you. You hit it right on the nose.
If insulin was free, or like things that are critical for people they will die without it. Like EpiPens, inhalers, whatever. Never see that. They don't give 2 craps if your kid dies. No, they really don't. They don't care if your kid ate a peanut and died because they didn't get an EpiPen that cost $500 this month. They don't care.
They don't.
And so it's all business. This is a corporation. And that's where I get sad and say I'm kind of an anarchist, because I really don't want to be. And I really don't like that idea. And I love the idea of America, but America isn't America anymore. Doesn't mean I don't support the troops. All my family's in the military or has been. My uncles are retired, Special Forces, Green Beret, all these people that I love dearly. And I'm like, that isn't what I'm against. I'm against the fact that it's all just a corporation now. It's sad.
It really is.
Yeah. I don't think that there's anything we can do at this point. I think that even the states and the countries that try just get nailed, and there is some states that try harder than others. I feel like California is real funny about their fruit and where it goes and different things, but it's still, at the end of the day, it makes you wonder why. Like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are they trying to hide? Why are they asking me this when I drive past? Like,
I
what?
remember those checkpoints.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like, is this because they don't want their secret out? I don't know, but I don't trust anything, so that's just my brain. But also, there's many things that I'm just like, whatever, it's gonna happen anyway. You do
Yeah.
what you can, but yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know.
No.
It's you can't avoid it unless you never go anywhere. You always stay home. You never have a Coke, which I'm
Which
never
is
gonna
not
have.
what we're promoting at all. We want people to get out
Mm-mm.
there, especially like
Yeah.
where I am. I feel so much better when I'm out, barefoot grounding, go to the beach or whatever. Because I
Mm-hmm.
live like 8 minutes from the beach. So
Oh,
I'm,
nice.
yeah, set. I can go downtown to the harbor front and
Right.
name it. There's so
Well,
much
we
to
have
do.
to get out and live our lives because that is anything they try really hard to make you do, like stay inside and don't go outside for months and years. Probably is not good for you.
Not at
Like,
all.
yeah,
Live in fear. No,
really,
that's not good for
yeah,
you.
really look at what they're doing. If they are pushing it, and I mean like mandating it, you should probably question it.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
really think about what they're doing there because and even when we were locked down and I was terrified, I still was like, yeah, I'm still taking my kids outside and going to the park. Like, every day we would go for, like, actually, we were better then than any other time we've ever been because consciously I was like, this is their only time that they're getting out. Kids weren't playing with them, but I still took them and let them skateboard around and whatever. And even at one point they closed off all of the playground equipment and then people were
Wow, they
still
went that
playing.
far in
Oh, they had
Utah.
caution tape. They locked up the basketball area and then people were still playing basketball on the outside courts. And so they took down all the nets. Yeah,
Ah,
they got real crazy.
I remember
And
hearing something
yeah.
about how strict your governor was.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was awful. And I just kept thinking, you know what? Regardless, they need to be outside their kids.
Hmm.
I mean, I did as many crafts and stuff as I could inside because they weren't in school, you
Hmm.
know? And I just thought, okay, I taught him how to actually some good things came of that because my son, like, he would have normally never crocheted. He's a boy, he probably would have been like, get out of here with that. And he's excellent at it. He's like the best sewer and crocheter in the house. My daughter
There you
was
go.
like, this is for the birds, but my son was all about it. And he made like an Afghan and he's made like
Oh,
10 of them
nice.
now. And he can make far more things than I can make now. He makes all kinds of stuff and he's a 16-year-old boy. And I don't think he would have ever done that because he played
Yeah.
hockey and stuff and was busy. And that would have not been on his list of
No,
to-dos.
but that's
And
great.
yeah. Yeah,
Is he still
we
playing
made
hockey or?
he played hockey since he was from 4 till this last year and he told me, "Mom, I just don't want to do it. I just need a break." Cuz he
Oh,
played it for so long. But he's also very big and looks like he would be intimidating, but he's not. He's the type of
okay.
person that he loves to play and he likes to do it, but the coaches in high school start like really getting in your ass. Like, they're like, win, win,
Oh,
win. And
I
he's
believe
like,
it.
oh, I don't like this anymore. He loved youth hockey and like rec
Mhm.
hockey. But as soon as it got to that level of competition and he aged out of rec hockey here, you can only play rec hockey here until you're 14. And then they kind of kick you out. And so they say, well, you can go to high school. And he hated it so much. He was like, nope, I don't want to be yelled at in my face. Like, I don't like that. It's weird. And he's just very not about that. He's a thinker. He's really into foreign language. Like, he's already in college level Spanish.
Oh,
In fact,
wow.
I think after this year, he's like done with Spanish because they have no more Spanish to teach him. And
Hmm.
he's super good. I'm like, well, maybe take something else that's also Latin based. So I told him to take Italian and then you can be a linguist later. I'm like, go do that. You'll make a lot of money,
Sure.
like, or translate or whatever. But he's really good at it. I spoke to him a lot in Spanish when he was little. I just speak conversational Spanish, but I don't know how to write it or anything like that. And I just knew how to speak. Well, he picked up on it so fast. And then we would just have these conversations. And he used to say, Mom, slow down. And now I have to say, Reich, slow down. You're going way too fast. He has a lot of friends that are really from South America and they speak so fast. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying anymore. Like, you got to go slower. But he just makes fun of me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun. We have 6 kids, so we have quite the gamut. That's pretty normal in Utah. So
that makes perfect sense
yes,
now.
we have so many children.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
they did that Rodney Dangerfield. It was horrible. Like late in his career, Rodney Dangerfield movie. My Six Wives. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's
filmed
a
in
real,
Utah.
Well, and so the mainstream church is not that way, but the FLDS is that way. And my sisters, my sister's ex, the one I did the interview with, he was telling me about his dad. And he said when he was little, there was 3 wives, but they all had like 10, 12, and 16 kids. And then he said, then he got 12 wives. And I said, so how many brothers and sisters do you have? And he said, I don't know. I was like, you don't know? And he's like, I don't know anymore. I just know the 3 wives had like over 30. And I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of kids. So yeah, but they really do that. And they still actually have like compounds and stuff all over. And he was from, actually, it's on the Arizona, Utah. It's called Colorado City, and they have their own compound up here. And it's in southern Utah. That's why I made that joke to you, because you can tell they look like they just like escaped Little House on the Prairie set, you know.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And they have the dresses, and the hair is really, really, really long, and they do these really intricate braids, and I mean, they're unmissable. If you see it ever, you'll just go like, oh, whoa, 17 people just got out of that van, and they all are dressed like Little House on the Prairie, and they live like the Amish. They have their own communities. They do all their own stuff. They never speak to outsiders really, because they think we're all going to hell. So, as one does.
Yeah.
So, oh boy. But yeah, we have all that here, and it's an interesting place to live, because we have this dichotomy of like weird stuff like that still, and then we have the mainstream Mormons, and then we have the breakaways. A lot, it's getting bigger all the time. We have an Ex-Mo community is what we call it. Ex-Mo, Ex-Mormon. And so we have that, and then we've just got all this different stuff. So it's a weird place to live sometimes, like. And then we have a base near us, so we also have a lot of different people from all over the place,
But there's a lot of great nature too in Utah.
Oh, that's the one thing other than our kids that keeps me here, and my parents like are getting older, and we have these kids that are married. Well, they're not married, but they all live with other people, and one's having a baby, one's moved out and probably will in the next few years have a baby. So we don't want to miss that. But the second thing that keeps me here is the mountains. They're so beautiful. And we have the desert, and we have like the mountains. And so you can, I mean, you can go
best of both worlds.
You really can. And it's weird. Like you can drive like down to St. George area, and it's completely like a desert, but you're here and it's like all pine trees and, regular Wasatch. So
yeah,
it's kind of crazy that way.
I know during all the lockdowns, one of my good friends, who stood against us, he went skiing in Utah. I forget which place it was at, but guess who was there? The governor of Arizona on the ski lodge. So he's at home, to the Arizona people, saying you are safer at home.
Lockdown,
he's on the ski hill partying with friends.
That sounds about right. A lot of them got caught doing stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
And then later they were like, oops, sorry. And I'm like, you scumbags, you guys are all out living your best life. That's another key where you knew it was BS, because you're like seeing all these people out and about, and they're not afraid. And so
well, even places like, I grew up in Michigan. I'm glad I wasn't there, because they were like closing off sections of the stores. You can't buy this. Wow. This is essential. This isn't, it was ridiculous.
Going to the store looked like Beirut. in those years. Like you went in there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing left. Like I one time went and it was that way. And the next time I went, I told my husband, I must have got there like right after they stocked the shelves. And I'm like, I am spending $600 today because I'm not going through this no toilet paper business.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. It's crazy.
I was like, this is not normal. And I'm not. Yeah. And luckily, since we have so many kids, I always buy everything in bulk. So we were kind of okay, but that was a situation. Like, I think they did that to Americans on purpose. Cause it's like the joke, how they call us dirty Americans. I think it was like the push for the bidet. It was like, we are going to make these Americans get the bidet because everywhere else, all the other countries have them everywhere. And so I'm like, that's what it was. I definitely think so. I'm like, I get it and all, but like, that was not nice. I don't know what they were doing there. There was some weird agenda on that one for sure. I'm like, cause that's such a random thing to buy. Like, what? Yeah. You're worried about that? Like, okay. I don't know. I was worried about a lot of other things, but that didn't come to my mind until later. I was like, that's weird. Okay.
No, I know what you mean.
It's more worried about food. Like the other thing that was really bought up, it was so weird. Pasta.
I noticed that too. Like when I went into Safeway, it was crazy.
I went in there and I'm like, why is there no ramen noodles for months? Like months. It was like, you couldn't. No, probably because they last forever, but probably because there's some coating on them that's like dangerous. Who knows? But yeah, it was weird. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're not buying any pasta today. It was like that for a while. I was like, okay, whatever. Like I said, I'm pretty not a prepper, but it's just when you have that many kids, you just buy so much stuff. I have prepping stuff, but it's like dehydrated stuff I wouldn't normally eat unless it's really like a problem. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing that was all weird. I feel like we're all going to revisit that.
And there was so much anger when you were in the stores too. I mean, I would go unmasked and they'd be like, oh, I'd have to find the stores that would, not say
let you come in.
They'd say real. It was funny. Even I think they have these in Utah Natural Grocers.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. They went crazy because they kicked out military veteran for not wearing a mask.
Oh.
So they made you wear masks until like eternity.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, a natural health food store doing that.
And on top of it, like that's such not a healthy thing to do. Like if you really look at that, like it is very unhealthy thing to do. And that was one of my key things where I was like, wait, they don't ever like us to do that. And especially if you have any respiratory problems, that makes no sense because you retain your own CO2 and then it's super dangerous if you're a retainer. And so I was like, they're doing this across the board and people with COPD and chronic lung problems are going to just start dropping over. And they did. I mean, people were passing out. I'm like, yeah, because they're breathing in their own CO2. It's not safe. Like, I mean, even physicians and surgeons and everybody like that knew it wasn't safe. It's not why we wear them. And it's not even if you touch it once, like when you're in surgery, if you touch your mask one time, it's contaminated.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt.
You have to throw it away. How many times were people touching them during it? Some people were hanging them in their cars. I seen them like in back pockets, hanging in cars,
all over the place.
Reused, all this stuff. And then on top of it, all the waste and the trash and I'm like, this seems very unhealthy to me, but they didn't care. Nobody cared.
No,
and they were everywhere. Gloves, dirty gloves in the middle of everywhere, like just taken off, discarded on the road. I'm like, this is disgusting. And by the way, if you wear gloves and you touch something once, it's contaminated. And now you actually have more bacteria than your bare hands because you're not cleaning that. And you probably touched your face. Because you're touching the mask.
Yeah.
Everybody did it inadvertently. Like move it off your ear, move it off your face, move it towards your nose. Oh, I sneezed or whatever. And then people that were doing that were spreading all those germs with the gloves on top of everything else because there's certain bacteria that only lives on those kind of things. Like that's why if you're a nurse, you can't have fake fingernails, because they found that when I did labor and delivery, they found these babies were getting these little scratches, tiny, not like deep scratches, nothing like that. These little tiny scratches, they were getting septic and getting really sick because the fingernails, no matter how much you cleaned them, no matter how clean they were, they harbor certain bacteria that is unnatural to a normal fingernail. So they were harboring these crazy diseases that don't grow on regular hands. And babies were getting sick, septic, just from, little tiny scratch. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, people don't think about stuff like that. I would never wear fake fingernails. I will tell you that. I know I look the type, but never gonna happen.
It was funny too, because where I was in Phoenix, they rescinded the mask. This is how much of a farce this whole mandate mask thing was. They rescinded it in Scottsdale, but they kept it in Phoenix. And it was funny. I was shopping at a market in Scottsdale, and they were still enforcing the mask mandate. And I said, and I wound up getting kicked out. They're like, no, you gotta. I was at self-checkout. The guy cornered me, and I took the video. I took a
cornered
video
you.
Yeah, and I said, "This is Nazi Germany repeating itself." I'm like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just checking out." He goes, "No, you can't." And the reason why he came over was because an older lady went and reported me to him and said, "Yeah, he needs to get out of here. I'm gonna perfectly healthy person's gonna kill me."
Oh my gosh. It was really like the Diary of Anne Frank. I felt like you really felt like you knew who would have turned you in, like back in the day. Going through that with the Jewish stuff, like when the people would help them and hide them and all that, like you kind of knew after all that started happening who the people would be that would turn them in and who would help people. It felt so much like that. And even Jewish people that spoke out said that it felt like that. And I'm like, it's sad. It's a sad world that they even had that repeat. I can't imagine how traumatic that was for the few survivors that were left. But I mean, there's things that they have done that absolutely we will not know the 100% like their thoughts or reasons behind it for years upon years. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff come out. I almost guarantee it. And it won't be for a long time until they can't prosecute them anymore, however long that is, because they're going to hide it for that long, and it just feels like the biggest deception, because at the end of the day, whether you believe in it or not, or think we're crazy or not, you have to admit one thing: everybody still got COVID. And I mean, according to the fake tests of Carrie Mullis, I do believe that Carrie Mullis did a good thing in making those tests, but he himself said they can find anything in anything. Yeah, his direct quote: "They can find anything in anything," and he hated Fauci.
He did. He said Fauci doesn't know anything about anything.
Yep. Yep. He said, and I would say it to his face. That's my favorite part of the video. I was laughing so bad. I was like, and where he got his knowledge was probably forbidden knowledge from like angels, because the way he made the PCR test was he bumped his head and passed out and woke up, and it was written on the side of his car because he was high on acid. And I was like, what? It was either acid or mushrooms. I can't remember, but I was like, that's some Enochian workings right there. I mean, most people don't even know what I'm talking about with that, but I'm just like, wow, that's weird, but all of it goes together. I mean, he died right before that all happened. I think he
right there.
Yeah. He died of the same heart attack as Kubrick, I think. Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. The dart gun heart attack. No, I'm kidding.
Well, the other guy died in 2021. Luc Montier.
Yep, Luc Montier. All the people that knew anything. Oh, and then all the scientists that were on the airplane that like crashed. Do you remember that?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it was like 60 people or something that all had like really big knowledge and all this scientific knowledge, and they all died suddenly. I'm like, wow, they're really going all in. Like, I mean, of course, we're just randomly speaking about this for fun. and we're just
Yeah,
conspiracy theorists. So who would believe us
exactly.
anyway?
Yeah.
We have to say that, right? So we don't get in trouble. But I'm just like, this doesn't even make sense. Like,
No.
and yeah, it does make sense if you've got a really effed up mind, which I have. So I was like, this does make sense. This is scary, but it's not making good sense. This is like very frightening,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, their agendas are not our agendas. And when I try to explain this, my mom had the hardest time forever because she's like, but why would they do that? I mean, we pay taxes and you would think they would want our money and you would think they would need us for this or that. I'm like, they don't care about you as much as you
No,
care
not
about a
at all.
cockroach or an ant. Before you spray your house for bugs, as much as you think about that ant, that's how much they think about you.
No.
And then she finally understood. I was like, she's like, but why would they tell us? I'm like, they have to. It's a revelation of the method. They have to, or it's on their hands. But now it's not. It's on yours because they told you and they absolve themselves and walk away. And she had a really hard time with it for a long time. And now she finally understands. She's like, okay, I get it. Because I would tell her so many things, especially following the Last American Vagabond. He would find out weeks ahead of time. And then I would tell her, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is why. And she didn't believe me. And after about 6 months of that, she was like, why do you know this? And I'm like, because it's out there. And she finally was like, oh, I got it. Okay. But it's just sad that I don't feel like anymore. I feel like the one thing with our youth, especially, they don't want them to be like you or I, like your show's called Wisdom and Knowledge. Like they don't want us to study, like, or
No.
have that, that inherent drive to figure something, like go figure it out. And they don't want us to have that anymore. And I do think they've succeeded. And it started with Common Core. It started with like, yeah, 5 + 5 isn't 10 because it can be something else. And everyone in the world was like, no, it can't. And then they started with little things like that. And eventually it just changed the whole aspect of our kids because they're like, well, I'm right anyway, so I don't have to do that. Like the wrong answer is right. It's fine. And you're just like, no, that's not fine. And then, but to them, it is. So I don't even know how we go about changing that. Like, that's so, like, such a random thing. Like, when the kids see me with tons of books, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I gotta figure this out. And they're like, yeah, but you were already a Mormon. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean I know everything. I have to still figure stuff out. And they're like, oh, you're trying to find like a clincher. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to figure it out. And they're like, figure what out? And I'm like, never, no, it's fine. My son's pretty inquisitive and I do think he will be a researcher, but just in general, I just don't think there's that many people that give a shit because they just are too busy with their own damn lives and they're online shopping or playing video games or on Facebook or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
They're way too busy to care about that. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
We're just going to just sit there and not know anything. Then you're just going to turn on CNN for the 45th time. And, like my brain would explode. Like, that's why I just turned it off. My mom kept calling me when COVID was, oh, CNN and the news. And they said this, and I watched this one because you said that one was bad. And I said, Mom, they all say the same thing. It doesn't
it's
matter.
all this.
Turn it off. She's like, I don't watch CNN now. I watch some other one. It was some other big one at that time.
Yeah.
And I think it was Newsmax or something. I was like, Mom,
yeah, it's the same indoctrination.
Yeah. I said, turn it off. Just turn it off. Like, walk away. Go outside in your yard or your neighborhood or your world, and figure out what's going on in your world and let the rest go. If you need to watch the news for the weather, so be it, but you can Google it. So I'm like, I just don't even waste my time. Like,
no, not at all.
Yeah, it's stupid. And that's what we need people to do. If we got more people to turn off that crap and just look at the world around you, stop it. Stop looking into 35 other places where they've got all these wars, all this shit. And I'm sorry, they're just trying to make us believe the end of the world is coming faster than it really is, because the stars don't lie and they don't align. Do I think he's coming soon? Pretty much. But do I think we're in actual revelations? No, because it doesn't match. So they want us to believe that so they can usher in the AI antichrist of the freaking Blue Beam Project, so that we all believe that Jesus came back. But like, I just don't buy it, and I mean, I guess I might miss the boat if it really is, but I don't know. I don't think it's true right now. Like, I see all this stuff and it's not happening organically. It's being made to happen, especially the weather. They're like, well, look at all these earthquakes and look at this and look at that. I'm like, yeah, but why? They're making that happen. They're weather modding everything. So of course you're going to have more problems. They're shooting stuff up into the sky constantly, including the eclipse we had. They shot at it with a rocket. Yeah. What the hell are they doing? And then they're like, we're just checking out to see about this and that. They skimmed over that real fast. And I was like, no, you shot a rocket at the sun. What are you doing? And they're like, oh, no, it's totally fine. I'm like, right. Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds totally fine. And people just, how many people cared? How many people even cared when they were like, aliens really exist? And people were like, okay, cool. What's for dinner?
Yeah, good point.
I was
Very
like,
good
what?
point.
I was like, wait, go back. What are you talking about? And then I'm like, no, this isn't good, because they're not aliens. They're demons. And I'm 100% sure on this, is they're fallen angels and different scary stuff that they know about. And it's going to be like a big war later, and we're all going to be tricked. Like, I totally believe that. Because the thing that people say that makes me laugh, if you know theology, is, okay, all of the fallen angels and Nephilim died in the flood. Okay. Do you know what it really says? Because it says after their bodies died, they were going to be here forever and basically make our lives hell. Like, they don't die. They're angels. They're eternal. The whole point why God got pissed and got mad at them for mating with women was because they're already eternal. They don't need posterity. You don't need posterity if you don't die. So they don't die. They just change a little bit. And so I'm like, you do understand that. And it was partly to get rid of a lot of weird stuff they were creating, like chimeras. And I mean, there's evidence of that. Look at the Sphinx. Why the hell is there, half horse, half men? Why are all these weird things like all over the place? Because they made weird things that I do think they had to wipe that out. Those weren't eternal. They were creations. But there's some stuff that is eternal, and you might be surprised if you read through that real careful. And also the extra canonical books that they took out after the Council of Nicaea, you have to remember, if you believe in the King James Version, the King James Version had those in it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it just bugs me. Little stuff like that. I'm like, okay, back to the demon talk of my friend when we first got on. Right. We've been on forever. I've been chewing your ear a long time.
No, this was great. We'll have to do it again.
I would love to. Yeah. I'll try and stay more. We definitely got on the COVID topic, but actually I'm kind of glad, because I really haven't got a chance to do too many of my views on that. So that was kind of nice.
No, that's great. Yeah. And if people want to follow you, they can follow you on Unfiltered Rise podcast. I'll put all the links below.
Yes. Yes. And this has been a great time. I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Heidi Luv, Unfiltered Rise podcast, everyone. Yep. Thanks so much. Yes. Wisdom and Knowledge 5. Subscribe, share.